you get to a breaking point, right? You get to that, is this really what I was meant to be when I started? And I had this grand dream and vision of financial freedom and investing in real estate so that I could do whatever it was that was your life dream. And if you get to that breaking point and either need to figure out your way through it or acknowledge what's not working and pivot.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Freedom Blueprint. Today I have with me Corinn Altomare. Thank you so much for joining, Corinne.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Corinne is an amazing investor, and I'm so excited for her to share her story with you. I know there'll be a lot of wisdom and takeaways and lessons learned. So let me tell you a little bit about Corinne, and then I'm going to let her take it away and share her story. To give you the big picture, Corinne is the co-founder and the principal of Hearthfire Holdings. It's a private equity firm that manages nearly $150 million in assets over 22 locations. She has a background that spans opera performance, tech property management at the Federal Reserve, and she has family roots in real estate as well. So she has a unique perspective to help investors build wealth and transform communities. She's a passionate advocate for women in business, and she's been a leader in groups such as the Real Estate Investor and Go Abundance Women. Outside of work, she finds joy in empowering the world through her young daughter's eyes. So I just love what you bring to the table, Corinne, and I'd love for you to kind of, give us some depth into that background and how you got to where you are today.
Well, we'll keep this short, right? For the sake of everybody's time, I think kind of as you outlined there in the introduction, my life has been a winding road, and I came to real estate originally when I was still very much full-time gigging and in my performing artist days. And so real estate was meant to be a passive income source for me so that I had a little bit of a financial foundation in between gigs and things like that, because that's a very uncertain life. I ended up in that single triplex. So that was my first investment in 2012. So 14 years ago now. That now turned into a full-time, very legitimate private equity firm with about 15 employees, a C-suite that I am honored to have here helping us build things at Hearthfire. So it's been quite the journey for sure. If listeners are maybe considering certain transitions or trying to figure out how to get to X, Y, or Z from A, B, or C, been there, done that. It's all about creativity and resilience and persistence, I will say.
All right. So we hear creativity, resilience, and persistence. I agree. Those are so important, especially in the real estate investing space. I feel like creativity is higher up there than it may be in some other spaces, right? Because this is almost like the Wild West, like a new and evolving field in a lot of ways. I'd love to hear maybe some specific examples, if you're willing to share some of those pain points or times where you did have that growth and that evolution and how those factors came into play.
I certainly got to a point in the original multifamily portfolio, because at this point we've had 9 full cycle deals in our history. But in the early years when we were managing still the apartments, and I get called to an apartment that's flooded because I'm in Philadelphia where we're between 2 rivers. So anytime that it rains really hard, water just comes up in the basement, right? Because we have such a high water table. So I get called and I'm over there shop vacuuming a flooded basement in my business attire because I was working for the Federal Reserve at the time. So I see a lot of new investors kind of go that route of starting into real estate, and you get to a breaking point, right? You get to that, is this really what I was meant to be when I started? And I had this grand dream and vision of financial freedom and investing in real estate so that I could do whatever it was that was your life dream. And if you get to that breaking point and either need to figure out your way through it or acknowledge what's not working and pivot. So we had grown things to such a point where we couldn't wear all the hats anymore and continue to function, right? So for us, it was starting to hire a team and then training that team and figuring out how to transfer everything, because we're a husband-wife team. So much of our operations in the early days, because we were always attached at the hip, we could just kind of almost speak shorthand to one another, right? That doesn't translate when you're building a team, hiring new people, trying to get that legacy knowledge out of your head and into SOPs or into some other sort of repeatable reference materials for new people as you build and grow your team.
Something you touched on there that I would love to explore further, multiple things. But one of the things I'd love first is let's dive into your wisdom, because so many real estate investors are working with their spouses, right? And so what would you give as wisdom? What worked for you so that you could work together well, still preserve that relationship, not have that work relationship balance? Do you have any wisdom out there for people who are working with their spouse and maybe struggling?
Well, I'm still trying to figure it out every day. So if you're struggling, join the struggle bus. It's fine. That's life. As long as you keep struggling through together. Self-awareness and realizing each partner's unique individual strengths and not beating either yourself up for who you are and who you are not. And also recognizing who your partner is and who they are not. And as entrepreneurs and business owners, we are pretty aggressive in our pursuit of continuous personal evolution and growth and all of that. But there is also only so much that a person can grow and evolve in any given day. So a very healthy scoop of patience, I would say, in our dynamic. My husband is the high D, super fast thinking, driving, numbers, analytical, strategy, prototypical CEO entrepreneur. I am the heart and the conscience and the one that keeps things a little bit more on the steady track and tries to maintain a bit of consistency in our day-to-day in between all of the big shiny objects, big ideas and excitement about, oh, let's go do this, that, and the other thing. So balance, right? And most relationships are an element of yin and yang. And so maintaining and preserving that balance. I have friends that do a really great job of the couple having, once a month, a weekend away or things like that. We're terrible at that. We're workaholics, something that I continue to strive for us to be better at. So this is me being completely vulnerable, I guess, to you and your listeners, and that even at this level that we've been working together, we've been together as partners for 13 years now, and we're still figuring it out. And I think that's the joy and the beauty and the excitement in life, right? Is that it's not ever just the one same thing. If you find the right partner, then you enjoy evolving together and having a healthy appreciation for one another's opinions, being able to have some of those disagreements, agreeing to have different opinions on things, working through it, and continuing to come back together and working towards the big picture.
No, I think there are a lot of pearls there in the sense of, celebrating your differences, accepting that who you are, who they are, and using that to your advantage versus it's such a natural state for people to want their spouse, their partner to think and be like them. And really the strength in that partnership is the differing views. Like I remember back in my undergrad in business, they're talking about the synergy where the whole is greater than the sum of the individual parts because of that magic that happens when you have multiple people with multiple different life experiences and viewpoints and strengths working together.
I will say we function much better when we're not striving against one another, right? There were times where I was trying much more to be the super high-powered driving female in business, right? And it wasn't me, and it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't good for our personal or professional relationship because it ended up being a little bit more combative and friction. And when I more relax into my natural strengths and where I more find joy and find that time just disappears and what I love doing, then that supported him in where he is excellent. We're lucky that we are complete opposites, right? So we don't have to be fighting for the same role. If I can be wholly me, that supports him and opens him up to be all of who he is. So hopefully listeners, where if they are in business with their spouse or a life partner, there's enough of that there, enough of that trust to be who you are and relax into it. And if there's any gaps between the two of you, that's where you hire out and you delegate and find other ways to solve for that rather than trying to be something and someone that you are not. And then you're in this horrible loop of you beat yourself up for not being good at things that you don't enjoy doing. Why do that to yourself? There's so much in all of us of our unique beauties and strengths to just celebrate and then fill the gaps with people that are excellent there. I mean, there's so many people and unique geniuses in this world. Just build the team around you and around that.
So many pearls of wisdom in that for sure. I just want to give you kudos for being in a place where you can celebrate that you and your spouse are different and what that brings to the table. Because like I said, so often we just fight to have them be like us. But what I'd love to dive into next, because you have done this so successfully, And you just hinted at it, your last answer there was that leverage with other people. So often what holds investors back is that they stay in that solopreneur route, right? They don't use the leverage of other people, and they don't have experience. They don't have training in leadership or management or anything like that. And so it's intimidating. And so they just don't do it. I'd love to hear your wisdom in how you got what you've learned along the way in terms of hiring out and having a whole team that works for you.
This is a masterclass topic, but what we have found is you get what you pay for. So we had some very expensive lessons learned when we tried to go cheap. And so now we really look for, and like we've hired out an entire C-suite, right? So I'm talking about CFO, COO level, head of construction, $100 million projects that we have here going on. So that's a whole other level. When we started trying to hire a team, we still, as solopreneurs, right, had that sense of, well, I can't afford to pay. And so we gave equity to partners. The partners were people that were in the same stage as us. And so they couldn't help us grow the business. So the biggest thing that I would say to myself 5 years ago is putting a higher value on my experience and what I did know, and really looking to surround myself with people 5-10 years ahead of me. I think there was a little bit of just too much not valuing what we had. The absolute biggest value that we've seen in growing our team is hiring people that almost intimidate you. And maybe they do intimidate you because they are in their zone of genius. They are better than you. But that's the only way to build a company overall that is going to grow, that is going to excel, that is going to be bigger than any one individual person. And if you want to be more than a solopreneur where you are chained to your real estate or whatever your single business is, if you ever want to be able to retire or step out of that or step into a slightly different arrangement in your life, then you need to build something that is not just you. Because otherwise, all you're doing is chaining yourself to something for the rest of your life, and you're not giving yourself any possibilities for financial freedom.
Love it. And I think one of the themes that's the same as what you said before, and part of why you've accomplished so much is because you understand that while it is scary, we need to bring other people in our lives where their strengths are our weaknesses. And we've got to acknowledge that that area is a weakness for us and be comfortable being around someone who's better at it, so that we can have their skill set in our world.
100%.
Here's a word from our sponsor. If you're a real estate investor, you know how overwhelming managing tasks can be. Workergenics offers full-service virtual staffing solutions to help lighten your load. As a start, they're giving away a free Delegate or Die checklist listing 100 tasks you as a real estate investor can delegate to a VA. This guide helps you focus on what truly matters. Visit workergenics.com/freedom blueprint to download it today. That's workergenix.com/freedom blueprint to get your free checklist and start delegating today. And now let's get back to the show.
Listening to your gut, and that doesn't mean that you give them carte blanche. You still ask questions. You still dig in. That doesn't mean that you can completely check out as the business owner and ask the stupid questions, right? But by doing that, then they always know that you're continuing to watch, that they can't lazy or perhaps do something unethical or whatnot. That's your opportunity to grow, right? By taking that approach with, say, a CFO or head of operations or something like that. So you continue to monitor and dig into whether it's KPIs, however you're tracking their performance, but absolutely hire someone who's more advanced than you. Otherwise, you're going to be stunting your business's growth.
And you hit on another great stumbling block for most people with that one. Oh my goodness. The fact that, you'll hire someone who's an expert in this section. And then so often you're like, okay, it's handled. I don't need to look at it. When really we need to inspect what you expect and have the catches in place so that they know that you know what's going on. One more thing I think that you have a lot of experience in, and there's probably some lessons you could share, is I noticed that you have over 22 locations now. So I'd love to have you share a little bit about that growth, that multiple locations. What are some lessons you've learned or experiences you've had along the way? And what are the strategies or tools that you now use to manage multiple locations well?
We're continuing to grow in order to continue to get better. So the big end goal for us building a portfolio of this size is so that we could attract a larger management partner. So our first multifamily sites, we managed ourselves. Our first self-storage site, we managed ourselves. And then we started bringing in, and then we hired, and then we started bringing in smaller third-party management as we more focused on the asset management, the investment management, and continuing to identify the right properties, the right investments, and bring in investors to that. That was all good enough for then. But as we continued to want to get more excellent, become really an institutional level firm, which I feel like we're getting closer and closer to now. We have a couple programmatic joint ventures with family offices, small institutions, firms, things like that. So we're getting ever closer to that level. And then the next step there was to have a REIT manage our portfolio, or to have assets that were Class A quality that a REIT would manage. So we knew that we had to get to a certain portfolio size where a large group, Extra Space, CubeSmart, would agree to take on the entire portfolio, because individually these are perhaps small, mid-sized storage facilities, not interesting enough for a big shop, for a big player. So we're playing that portfolio game. So we did finally get there. We are now, I'm not sure when this will air, but as of mid-February, CubeSmart will be managing the bulk of our portfolio. Extra Space does have a few locations that are Class A development, as well as some existing value add. So the question was how we went from 1 to 2. Those were kind of the steps, right? Self-manage, bring in smaller independent third-party managers, learn how to manage them, learn where their limits were, and then ride that out until we got big enough where we could attract a next institutional quality level of manager for our assets. And going from local, right, our first properties obviously were in our backyard where we could go be and manage them. And then going out of state, that was a big step. And now we are primarily Northeast, Midwest, Mid-Atlantic. We could potentially go nationwide, keep smarter, extra manage coast to coast. So that does open up what were geographical boundaries for us before.
I think that you gave a lot of great wisdom or paths that people can follow there, and there's no shame in the game of getting started and self-managing and doing that work and getting those boots on the ground and yourself to then eventually growing and evolving. It's a great story and a success story of doing it well.
It's helpful on the accountability front, right? Because if you've done the job yourself, even if it was just for a few months, maybe a year or so, you have that experience in you. So first of all, I so deeply appreciated the people that we hired, right, that then took that off of me because I knew what a grind it was. And then you also know a little bit more of the nuance, some of the nuts and bolts. I think it certainly sets us apart as GPs, as operators, as sponsors. The fact that Sergio and I have done the boots on the ground, boots in the muck, up on the roof when it's raining and things are leaking and fixing that, or cleaning out hoarder units, like doing the gross, disgusting jobs, right? But like, we don't have any shame about rolling up our sleeves and doing what needs to get done. I think the fundamental quality here is that as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, buck ultimately stops with you, right? We get all of the problems, we get all of the scenarios that nobody else can maybe figure out, or things get escalated to us. So you have to have that core willingness to just jump in and do whatever is needed. So that's our beginnings. We deeply appreciate the people that take that off of our shoulders now, and the ability to now partner with really top tier operators in our industry and continue to grow from there.
I love it. I love your transparency there and sharing all those details to help guide others. As we near the end here, one more thing I'd love to dive into is you transitioned from those multifamily to self-storage. Can you speak a little bit about how that worked, pivoting strategies? Like, did you sell off all your multifamily? Did you just keep them and then new acquisitions were self-storage? And I'm sure there's a lot more that goes into it as well. But it's very common, people pivot strategies in some way, single family to multifamily, long-term to short-term, or in your case, residential to self-storage. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how that went and some lessons from it.
Yeah. I mean, this comes back to the scaling concept, right? And where we kind of reached our breaking point with multifamily and self-managing, and also the larger multifamily deals that we were underwriting, numbers just didn't make sense for us. We were how some of the other bigger operators were making offers and being able to make that pencil for their investors. It didn't make sense to us. So we started looking for other asset classes where we were being able to find good returns for our investors. And at that time, I mean, our investors were family and very close friends. So we were not going to be risky or aggressive at all. We're still very conservative. So the pivot, we were looking at storage, manufactured homes, RV parks, and we like storage because there's no people living in your real estate. If you do it right. Now, if you're operating it right, you don't have people living in your real estate. You're not dealing with landlord-tenant law, the much more hands-on operational requirements for like RV parks for the amount of turnovers and things like that in and out. A variety of reasons. This is going back probably almost at least 8 years now at this point. So we started diving into storage. We loved the simpler business model, started sharing with our investors what we were thinking. We did sell all of the multifamily syndications and then pivoted, and then those investors came into our first storage deal, and then COVID hit. So it was perfectly timed. We had a couple loose ends. We did third-party property management for a while, so eventually sold that business, shut down our construction business that was all apartment turns and flips and things like that. And we went all in on storage really after the experience of COVID, and we saw what that was like managing for, thankfully we had sold all of our own holdings, but managing for other independent small property owners here in and around Philadelphia, not the most landlord-friendly area. So that really just reinforced that storage was the way that we wanted to go. Simpler business model, much more scalable, just much lower expense ratio. The operations, I mean, you're dealing with asphalt, sheet metal roofs, security lights. I don't have to renovate a kitchen or a bathroom every couple of years to keep up with trends and things like that. So that's how we made the pivot. That's how we brought our investors along with us. It did take us probably about 18 months from making some first offers to actually close on the first deal to kind of break into the new niche. But now we're here and we're here to stay. We love it.
And I heard along that, as you were telling that as well, I was noticing that you tried a lot of different things. You were property managing, you were doing a lot of different businesses. And so often, I think newer investors think, well, I'm going to start with A and I'm going to end with A. And the truth is that you may try strategy or business A, B, C, D. It might be until you get to E before you find the one that's the perfect fit for you.
Yeah, we got a lot of things going on. So where we are now, we're in a place of focusing on where we are, scaling that, seeing how far we can get with that. And then we'll see where we take these lessons learned next. But for right now, we are very much in a phase in life of focus. So we did that thing where we had 6 different businesses going on across all kinds of different industries. It's tough. It's tough to maintain that, to be successful in any one of those realms when you have too much going on. And then we had a child, and that changed our perspective and our capabilities within the hours of the day and the amount of sleep that we were getting. So that really forced us to make some decisions as well.
Yes, that's a good point. And often I feel like it can force us to 10x when we do have limits on our time or those aspects. We've got to really be smart and strategic with what we do. Well, thank you so much, Corinne. I'd love to wrap up with our quick fire questions here at the end. So first, what is a transformational system that you've implemented in your business?
Notion. Not a system, it's a tool, but Notion.
All right. I love that. Well, my second question was, what's your go-to tool? So if Notion is your answer for both, maybe you can give us like a 1 or 2 sentence description of either how you're using it or why you love it.
Notion is essentially our intranet, and it connects all of the various information that we have in different file folders on Google, consolidates them all. So organization, kind of a roadmap of where things are at across the company. And there are so many different really great systems that you can buy. You can buy templates from other great Notion creators out there and customize it. It's also supremely customizable, almost to the point of overwhelm, depending on your level of comfort with essentially just master databases. It's an incredibly powerful tool. And so that's my immediate number one answer.
Love it. And then final question, what's a book that has been transformational in your investing journey?
So Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. It's not specific to investing. It's a massive book. He interviews so many really amazing people. We invest in all assets of our life, right? Our health, our relationships, our community, our finances, of course. And I enjoy picking that up and just paging through a chapter or an interview. Or if I'm in a season of life where I need to go super deep into my health, then I can refer to all of the interviews that he has with people on anything that's health-wise. So that's a great reference book, I would say, maybe that I like keeping nearby when I find myself needing a little bit, just something else as far as inspiration or reinvigoration. So that one. And it's accessible, in our kind of short attention span days and world now, it's approachable. And then if you want to go deep, there's so much more in each of the individual interviews that you can go down whichever rabbit hole that you want to, but it's got such a breadth of great topics and wisdom in there. That's a good one.
Love it. Thank you so much. And then finally, Corinne, if people would like to connect with you, learn more, where can they reach you?
A website is hearthfireholdings.com. There's a contact us form there. So I would just point you to our website.
Perfect. And we'll have that in the show notes for everybody watching. Just go there and you can click or copy as needed. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Corinne, for all of this wisdom here. I am so excited, I think, to go back and re-listen to this episode and really think about how I can implement all of that wisdom in my own business and experience. So thank you so much for sharing and for your time today.
Thank you. I hope you and your listeners find it valuable. Good luck,
Thank
everyone.
you. And everybody, please make sure, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead and comment below what was helpful for you or what you're going to implement. And make sure to thumbs up or like the video and subscribe wherever you're listening on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify. And I'll see you next week.